Want to really level up your tutorial videos? In this video, I'm going to dive pretty deep into some really cool 3D animation and lighting effects that you can add to your videos. These techniques involve combining several different effects, but the results are stunning and super professional looking. There's a lot to cover, so let's get into it. So here I am in Camtasia and I've got a sample project open. So what I've done to begin is, the only thing I've done so far is I've taken a video, I've recorded a video of myself speaking, and I recorded my screen. So I've got myself, my video here, my screen is recorded here. The video of myself has some audio in it. So this is what we are starting with. Welcome to this test video. Let me just demonstrate going through. Okay, so that's that, and I've gone through and I've added some motion, I've scrolled, I've clicked a few different tabs, I've gotten some dark footage, dark screen footage, as well as the light screen footage, and some scrolling. So I just want to demonstrate all those things as we get into all these effects that we're going to add. So let's go 3D. So this is really cool. We're going to use the spotlight effect, going to use drop shadow, going to use border, masking, animation, all those tools are going to come into play here. So I apologize if this video is a little bit longer than my other ones, but I didn't want to miss anything out here. And I think I really like the way this works out. So hopefully you do too. So the first thing I want to do is I want to expose the background. I'm going to resize both of these things here. So both of these things meaning my screen and the video of myself. So let's go ahead and scale down the screen. So I go up to properties here and I'm just going to make the screen a little bit smaller, just like that, so we can expose the background. And then let me make some adjustments to the video of myself. So I'm just going to make this a little bit larger. Let's go ahead and add a circle mask to this. So let's go up to Visual Effects and we'll scroll down until we see mask right here. And we'll click that and we'll drop it. Oh, not here. We'll go right down and drop it onto the video right here on the timeline. Okay, so here is the circle mask applied. Now, if we click anywhere in it and move it, the entire thing is going to move. And I see right off the bat, one thing I want to do is I want to go up to View here and I want to uncheck Canvas Snapping. So I have a little bit more freedom to move things around. Okay, I'm not snapping to the edges of the canvas. But now if I want to reposition this mask, I have to click this center X here, or the red X. It turns yellow when you click on it, and then you just move it to wherever you want it. If you want to resize it, you can drag a corner like this. If you want to make sure it stays circular, hold down your Shift key while you do this. Okay. And then that looks good for the size, and then you can reposition. I want to make sure I don't go up too high because I want to maintain the circle shape at the top as well. So that looks good to me right about there. Okay, so that is the mask of my video. So I want to click and reposition that over here, just like that. And perhaps that's a little bit too big. Maybe let's just make that a little bit smaller and then reposition it. Something like that. Okay. The next thing I want to do, in order for us to see the lighting and the 3D effects, I want to make the background a light color. So let's go up here to Project Settings, and I want to change my background to white. We'll go ahead and apply that. Okay, that's done now. So the very basic thing that you can do to make it look 3D right off the bat, the easiest thing you can do is to put a drop shadow on it. And we can put a drop shadow on the screen. So let's highlight the screen. Let's come over to Visual Properties and find the drop shadow effect right here. And we'll drop that on. You can either drop it on here in the canvas, or you can drop it onto the screen here down in the timeline. So we'll do that. Now you can't really see it that well, so if you want to make it a little bit more visual, you can come over here to the properties under drop shadow and you can increase the offset so it sticks off a little bit more. Okay, you can also play with things like the blur, right, and the opacity, make it darker or more see-through. I think that looks pretty good. And that gives it a 3D effect right off the bat. So that looks pretty cool. Now, to make it look even better, we want to drop the drop shadow also on our mask here. Actually, before I drop the drop shadow on it, let's put a border on it. Okay, let's go ahead and grab the border and put that on the mask. Now, you can't really see it because the thickness is set to 1. Over here in the properties, we see border. So let's increase the thickness. And if you can see what's happening here, the border was applied to the entire frame of the original video and not just the masked part. Okay? In order for the border to work on just the masked part here, you have to click this Use Alpha option right there. So click that, and then you can see the border is just applied to the circle mask. Okay? Now you can play with the thickness till you get the size that you want. Okay? I like the way that looks. Okay? And then the next thing we want to do is we want to add the drop shadow to this. So let's, with it highlighted, let's come back over to Visual Effects, and let's go find the drop shadow again. It's right here, and we'll drop it on that right there. And it's kind of hard to see, but there is a bit of a shadow there. You can see it more with it highlighted. Come over to Properties, and under Drop Shadow, again, we can change the offset. You can see the shadow there. Okay? So it's just a subtle change, but it gives it some depth. And if you want it to see it more easily, more pronounced, you can turn the opacity up. So at 100%, it's solid black in this case, because black is the color. You can change that color, but for a shadow, I think black is the best color, a black or a gray. And you can achieve gray by going with black as the color and turning down your opacity. Okay, which I think looks better anyways. It's more natural shadow. Okay, so now let's just see what that looks like. We can just kind of scrub through it. There, you can really tell on the when the screen is white, right? Now the screen is kind of getting lost in here with this, but we're going to fix that. The screen, see how it kind of blends in with the background? I'm going to do something else to fix that. Yes, I could put a border around that, and that would define that more, but we're going to do it a different way. Now the next tool I want to use is something called the Spotlight tool, and we can find that once again under Visual Effects. If we scroll down near the bottom, we see this tool here, the Spotlight tool. So let's drag that onto our screen capture, just like that. And you can see what it did. It added a spotlight. So you can see a couple things. There's a red, kind of like a sun shape up here, and then you have a center right here. So what's happening is there's a spotlight. It's like this corner and you can move these. So this corner here, see what happens when I move these? This thing right here is basically the source of light, okay? And this defines the direction of that source of light. And I can move them both. So, and the shorter that I make them, the more pronounced that light is. The closer the light becomes. Picture it being a flashlight, and the closer I move the 2 points together, the closer the flashlight is to the screen. Okay, so if you just want to highlight one part of your screen, you make the distance very short like that. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go for more of a subtle look. So in fact, you can drag this right off the screen as well. I can put it way up here. Okay, and as you can see, and if I make this really long, there's hardly any effect. I mean, there still is some effect, and you can see what the difference is. If you come over here to Properties, you can turn off the spotlight effect, right? Or turn it on. You can see the difference that it makes. Turn it off, turn it on. Okay, so that gives it some more depth. And you can see the different effects of adding the spotlight on both the light color as well as on a dark screen. Now, it's a little more subtle on the dark screen, and you can check it again by toggling it on and off, right? There is a bit of a difference, but I'll show you how you can really tell the difference, okay? What we're going to do now, let's go back to a lighter background. Let's make it all lighter. There, that's probably good right there. Now, this is really going to make this stand out, and I think this is a really cool effect. So not only can we use the Spotlight tool, but we can animate it, okay? Let me show you what that does. So let's come up here to Animations, and let's just bring a custom animation down onto our screen, okay? Let's move it back here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, and now let's animate this, and you can animate both points. So as you know with animations, you can alter the properties at the beginning of the arrow and at the end of the animation arrow. So let's leave the beginning the way it is now, and let's put the playhead at the end, and let's make some changes. Let's take this source and move it over to this side. Okay, and now let's take this. We don't have to change it very much, but we can a little bit. And let's just move it to there. Okay, and let's make the animation a little bit longer. And now let's see what we get with that. Browser. I am on Camtasia. Isn't that cool? So that's a little bit of a light effect on using the spotlight by animating the spotlight, and it gives it a little bit more 3D. Now let me show you something that's really cool. So we use the spotlight on the screen here, and the background, as you can see, it's just a plain white background. Now we could add a motion background, right? So we could go up to media here. I've already got a motion background in place. Let's just drag both of our clips up a track, and then let's put this motion background down here, right? So that gives it another interesting look. Browser. I am on Canva. And sure, that's cool, but I'm going to do something that's even more cool and a little more customizable. Let's delete this. Okay. Now, what we want to do is we want to add a spotlight to the background and animate that. Okay. Now, you can't just add that spotlight to the background. You have to add a spotlight to an element, right? Either a screen capture or a video or a callout, right? So let's go ahead and add a callout. We'll go up here to annotations. Actually, I've got one in my favorites that I use all the time. It's just this one right here. It's just a square. Let's drag this down here. Okay. Let's fill the entire screen with this. I'm going to turn canvas snapping back on just while I do this. Okay. Now let's bring it to the back. Whoops. Down here, and we will stretch it out in the timeline. Okay, so that's our new background. Now I'm going to make it white again. Okay, it's going to look the same as it did before, but remember what we're trying to do is add a spotlight to it. So let's come up to properties, and we'll change the color to white. Okay, now it looks the same as it did before. Okay, but now let's go ahead and find that spotlight effect in the visual effects. We'll go to spotlight. Let's drag it down to this new callout. Okay, now we have the same controls. And this is a different spotlight effect than what we put on the other one, right? So now we have the spotlight effect on the screen, but we also have one on the background, behind the screen. It's in my browser. I am on Canva. Okay, so we have the screen spotlight animated. Let's go ahead and animate the background spotlight. So let's make sure we have the light source and the direction of the source the way we want it. And I think that looks pretty good where it is. We'll just start in that corner. And let's go ahead and get an animation, custom animation, drag it down to our callout. And I want to stretch it so that it's the same, it starts at the same place as the spotlight animation on the screen and ends in the same place, okay? So with the end of the animation arrow highlighted, let's go ahead and change the properties of the source and of the direction to something like that. And let's see what that looks like. I am on Canva here. Very cool. But there's a problem. And I don't know how many of you might have noticed this, but if you think about light, a spotlight shining on something, right? If it shines on something, then whatever's behind that something is going to have a shadow, right, of this something. So as you move this light, okay, what's going to happen is the shadow's going to move, all right? Now, remember this shadow that we put underneath our screen, the drop shadow? Well, it didn't move, right? It's down to the lower, it's down to the lower right. But really, when that spotlight moves like that, shouldn't the shadow also change so that it's now going down to the bottom left? I think it should. So let's make that happen. So let's go ahead and highlight our screen, just like this. Let's put the playhead at the end of that animation. Okay. Now, again, so we're okay with where the drop shadow is at the beginning. It's only the end that we need to change. So with the playhead at the end, let's go find our drop shadow in the properties, and let's change. You can either click a new direction here. Now with the source up in this top right like this, you're going to want the shadow to be down this way. So let's go ahead and just click here, and that automatically moved the shadow. If you want more precise control of where the shadow goes, just click and drag in this little wheel area here. And you can also, again, change the offset as well, like that. Okay, so we've changed it where it is here, and it's in a different spot to start with. Now let's just look at what the animation looks like. I am on Canvas. See how the shadow moved as well at the same time as the light. And the reason that is because they share the same animation arrow, right? All we did was we modified the properties at the end of the arrow, the properties of the drop shadow as well as the properties of the spotlight. They are both separate effects that we dropped onto that item, the recording in this case. I mean, you can do the same thing if you drop effects onto a callout as well. Okay. So far, so good. Now we're really going to level things up here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring some 3D into the screen, and we're going to manipulate the light and the shadows and all of that stuff, okay, with another animation. So let's move down the line here a little bit farther, okay? And what we want to do is reposition everything the way we want them to end up, if that makes sense. So I have an idea in my mind that I want this screen to basically fall back into the right of the screen and kind of be skewed in a 3D way. And I also want to move my circle mask to a different location and perhaps make it even a larger size. Okay, so that's the idea I have in my head. So all I have to do is I want to drag a custom animation down to the screen. Let's work on the screen first. Okay. Let's stretch it out and give us some room for this to happen. Okay. Now with that selected, let's just make this a little bit larger so you can see it better. With that selected, let's change the properties of this screen. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here into the properties, and I'm going to play with the Y on the rotation. Okay. You see what that does as I change that? Okay, now I want to take canvas snapping off again because I'll have a little bit more freedom, okay, to move that around. So we can move that around, say, to something like that, and we can also modify the X and the Z axis, like so. Okay, and we can reposition it to a new location. Just play with these until you get them to where you want them. You can also play with the scale, scale it up or down, but I think that looks good. Okay, so what we're doing is we're moving this screen from here to here. Okay, now when we do that, I'm also going to want to move, actually let's just move this over here a little bit more. When we do that, we're also going to want to move my mask over here. So let's get another animation and drop that onto the video here, and I'm going to make the animation occur over the same length of time as the screen animation. Okay, put the playhead at the end, and now I'm just going to make this a little bit larger. I'm going to make it larger like that, and I'm going to move it down to the bottom. Okay, and the idea is we can put some text up at the top. All right, so now with the movements done, okay, what I'm probably going to want to do as well is when that happens, I'm also going to want to have the shadows and the light move as well. The shadows don't look right at all right now with the screen where it is. And also the light, I want the light to be coming up from this top corner again. So let's get another animation, drag it down to the background, okay, the background callout that we created. Stretch it out to occur over the same period of time again. put the playhead at the end of the arrow, and let's move this source of light back over to here. Something like that. Okay, and we're pointing the light right at it. All right, now let's go into our screen. Select the screen animation, and it's kind of dark up in this corner. I don't want it to be that dark up there, and that's all because of this spotlight effect that we had on the screen. So let's move that one back over to here, and just move it around to whatever you think looks good, right? And you can choose to move this end as well. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Okay, and now what you want to do is, again, with the screen highlighted, we have to fix this drop shadow. It's not in the right place. Okay, so let's go over here to Properties, locate the locate the drop shadow, and let's move this drop shadow location back over to here. Okay, and I want to increase the offset actually to have it really stand off the page. And maybe even reposition this a little bit more so you can see more of it like that. Okay, and just move it around till you have it where you think it looks the best. I think that looks pretty good. Do I want this to be a little darker of a shadow? Maybe. Okay, now let's see what all of that... Now, one more thing actually. Let's check the drop shadow of my circle mask here. It's not as big. The offset is not as large as it is for this screen, but maybe that's okay. Let's just select that and go back over here into the properties under the drop shadow, and just let's increase that. Let's move the angle a little bit. Actually, I probably don't want the offset that pronounced. That's probably good. Okay, and again, we're making all these changes at the end of the animation. So let's go back and see what this looks like. I can demonstrate scrolling down like this. I think that looks pretty cool. Now I'm going to give you a little tip. If you wanted to zoom in to a screen here, you would normally do that with an animation, right? I just released a video on applying zooms and pans to your screen captures. I'll put a link up above if you want to check that out. But when you have the screen in a 3D position like this, there's something else you have to keep in mind. So let's go ahead and drag a custom animation down to our screen. Okay, this is where we want to do the zoom. Now, with this selected at the end, if we simply go up here to modify the scale, look, it's gonna change the scale of the entire thing. We don't want that. Let me just Control Z to change that back, to undo that. Now, if you go up here and you select the crop tool, now if you go to scale, look at that. Now you can zoom within and the frame doesn't move. You can move the scale. You can also pan within here, right? So if you wanted to, say, zoom to that location like that, you do that with the crop tool selected. And when you're finished moving it around like however you want it, then click the select tool again. And now let's just see what that animation looks like. Okay, and then let's just continue this. Let's drag another animation down because we changed screens here. Let's click the crop tool again. Let's kind of center this. We'll change the scale a little bit more. And let's say we want to look at that part of the screen. So now let's take a look at this. Or I can click on some different tabs here. Okay, pretty cool. Okay, now one more thing that I want to show you. I'm going to add another complex animation. And we can call this switching sides if you like. So this is a good layout. Let's say if you wanted to have the screen off to the side and maybe you want yourself in a circle mask and some text over here. I didn't leave a lot of room for text in this case because my mask is fairly large. But let's say I'm going to switch sides and then include more room for text. So what we want to do, you could just go through the steps, and it's with animations. Let's move the circle mask first this time. So let's drag an animation down to the video right here. Okay. And let's click the select icon here. Now let's resize this and move it over to the other side, down on the bottom. Okay. That's good for starters. Let's actually stretch this out a little bit so it takes a little bit longer. Okay. Now let's select the screen, drag another custom animation and put it on the screen. Let's match up the arrows again, animation arrows. And with the end of the arrow selected, let's take the screen and let's move it over to the other side. So we move it like this, and now let's modify all of the rotation values. And you want to modify this and position it how you want it on your screen. Again, just kind of play around with it till it looks. Pay no attention to the shadow. We're going to fix that. Okay, and put it on the screen however you want. Let's scale it up. We can scale the corners off the edge if we want. That's fine. Okay, so we're still working on the screen. With the screen selected, let's go ahead and change the, I just had to scroll out, change the source location of the spotlight. Let's bring it back over here. This is the screen spotlight, right? So let's put it over here and have it shine up this way. Okay. And now let's bring another animation down to the background call out. Okay. And then with that one, we're going to again modify the spotlight. Let's come up from the bottom this time. And we'll shine it like that. Okay, now let's just enlarge the canvas so we can see it better. Now let's fix the shadows. We'll go to the screen and go to drop shadow. Let's change the angle to back there, maybe a little bit. That's probably good right there. You see a little bit out of the bottom. And now the shadow on my circle mask over here in properties should probably be there and maybe a little bit smaller, less like that. Actually, no, maybe up there. Since there's a shadow up here, the light is down here. That might make the most sense. Okay, got that. And then let's see, what else did we want to change? Let's just see what that looks like. Like so. Here's a darker tab that might look a little bit better. Okay, that's starting to look pretty cool. And now you can put some text up here as well. You've got some more room. So let's just take one final look of everything that we've got here. I am on Canva here, and we can demonstrate scrolling down like this. Or I can click on some different tabs here, like so. Here's a darker tab that might look a little bit better. And also, one last thing you could do is, if there's a lot of time where there's not a whole lot going on with movement of the screen and the circle mask, you can still have like a much longer and slower spotlight animations in the background. So let's just bring an animation down like this. Okay, and then let's zoom out here so we can see this, and let's just have this change ever so slightly. Okay. All right, and let's see what that looks like. Now let's make just this a little bit bigger, and let's just play that. Tab that might look a little bit better or different in the test. So I would say that's probably enough for this test. So as you can see, there was a little bit of motion in the background there. One thing that I don't like the look of is this shadow here on top of the circle mask. I really think that should be moving with the spotlight moving in the background. So again, very easy to fix that. You drag another animation down and you match it up. And then at the end, let's just have the shadow of the mask move over to, let's say there. Let's just see what that looks like. A little bit better or different in the test. So I would say that's probably enough for this test. Just like that. Do you want more tips like this? Let me know in the comments below. Or come back for my weekly live stream. Every Tuesday I'm here live, sharing my screen and doing how-to tutorials. I show you how I make my videos and I answer your questions live. So if you're looking to improve your videos, join me in my next live stream. I'm Rob and I'll see you in the next video. Or in a live stream. I'll see you soon.